Welcome once again to the new chapter, a transformative talk show where we focus on character transformation, mindset development, self identity, and a whole lot. And in today's episode, as you all know, we are celebrating our Ghana month, our heritage, our pride. Therefore, we welcome you to today's episode. It's going to be a wonderful show as we fly the flags of Ghana so high. We dress in our beautiful kente and all that. There is still more that we have to know. We still have to know who we truly are as Ghanaians. And today in the studio, I have a very powerful man with me here. I'm going to read a brief profile of him. Then I will introduce him to all of us. So stick and stay, don't go anywhere. Share the link with a friend, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel because this is where we turn the pages and we read the new chapters. So, in the studio with me today, I am privileged to have a lecturer in African studies focusing on history and politics from the whole technical university. He is also a Pan-Africanist and a very gentleman. I won't do a lot of talking. I will allow himself to tell us exactly who he is. So let's welcome together Mr. Divine Yao Amu.
I want to take the opportunity to say very good evening to your cherished listeners and viewers and say that it is good to have a self-identity because that is the oxygen that survives your state of being. And that also promotes the idea of God's in his own infinite wisdom to create you to be who you are and where you find yourself to be for man and God himself.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know which of the names to use. I don't know if I should keep it formal or I should keep it neutral.
It's very important. The name, the relevance of name is for identity.
Sure.
And so you may have such an identity at various levels of your life. So if it has to do with formal, my name is Divan Yao. And to some extent, I wish I do not have even the word divine in my life. And so I prefer to be called Yao. And if anything at all, I am immortalized in my ancestral line of Amu. And so Amu will be very important.
Mm.
And in any case, popularly and generally, many people will call me Rasta. So do I have problem with that? Not at all.
Okay.
We use that as well. Yes.
Okay, so because we are talking more of Ghana and who we are, I will stick with the Amu. So I'll call you Mr. Amu.
Yes.
I think that's okay.
I'm very glad.
Yeah.
Call me Yao. I don't have problem.
Oh, okay. That reminds me, I think the studio today is blessed with a lot of Thursday borns. Myself, I'm a Thursday born. My guest is a Thursday born. And our producer is also a Thursday born. So, it's a Thursday misc and it's going to be beautiful. All right. Thursday borns, they are wonderful and they do good.
Very unique.
Okay. So we are celebrating Ghana month. And as I said earlier, we want to look at our identity as Ghanaian, defining our identity as we celebrate the Ghana month. We know we are Ghanaians, but we would like to understand who we are more. And the topic that we'll be looking at today is rediscovering the Ghanaian identity. With a sense that we know there are a lot of young men and women, and even the aged, who in one way or the other won't want to associate themselves with Ghana based on the economic hardship and some other few things that are not going the way they want it to go. So to some extent, some believe that if they can leave the shores of this country, they will never come back. So today I want us to really talk about who we are as Ghanaians so that we can encourage ourselves and see where we also have to play our part in building this nation as a Ghana. I hope that will be a beautiful conversation.
Sure.
Okay.
That falls in tandem with what the month March is in the life of the Ghanaians in recent time.
Okay.
It is a period of reenacting who we are from the clutches of colonialists and then post-independence struggle for economic survival as well as the fight against neo-coloniality.
Okay.
And so then it is very much important that every now and then we remind ourselves of the various struggles we've gone through to get to where we are. Question is whether this is where we want to be. Is that a question? Yes, that's a question. Is that the answer? No, I believe strongly this is not the answer. So this is not where we want to be. Our intentions and our objectives are more than where we are now.
Okay.
And I believe strongly that there is always one need that every moment of our life we should remind ourselves that this is not where the founding fathers of nation or of this nation want us to be. And it behooves us.
Okay.
It is our responsibility to continue with the struggle and do more than what our forebears have done in the struggle for political independence, so that at the end of the day, we will create a better place for generations to come after us.
All right.
Yes.
So with that beautiful thesis, I'll call it a thesis because that was so deep. When you hear the word Ghana, what core values comes to mind?
So first of all, we need to basically understand the creation of the word Ghana,
Okay.
if you like, the nation state Ghana. That will set the conversation in a frame that will bring a better understanding to the topic. And so Ghana is a nation state in a true sense of the use of the word that was actually created out of many ethnic groups as a result of colonial imposition on the space. Of course, the space is not very homogeneous from the outset. And during the period of the colonial imposition, we will say that at the eve of independence, would have to bring about 4 major territories together to create what Ghana is today.
Okay.
That's not to say that the people were not here and all of a sudden somebody decided to bring them together and say, I'm creating Ghana out of it. That could not be the case. When it comes to final settlement of the various migration groups into the space, I should say that at least by the mid 17th century, we can conclusively say that the dating of migration and settlement of people within the space of the or geopolitical space of Ghana today has been settled. However, the advent of the Europeans as well as the activities leading to colonialization, probably at least from 1874, which will be the formalized colonization of the British of the southern protectorate of the country.
Okay.
Eventually, we would have that as the base. Then we have the Asante territory. And of course, when you are talking of the Asante Kingdom or Empire, it entails a lot of the Middle Belt regions as we have them today. Then we have the Northern Territory. Then eventually we want to look at the Transvolta Togoland, which of course led to the plebiscite election. And so all these 4 columns or areas or territories were brought together to create Ghana at the eve of independence in 1957. So this is what politically, if you speak Ghana, it will be. And of course, as I said, before the advent of the Europeans, states were in their various natural space, creating a greater expansion, or if you like, trying to create a nationhood in the true sense of the usage today. So we have states, empires, kingdoms that were of various levels and of various sources before the advent of the colonialist. And eventually, by the order of Berlin Conference in 1884-85, that laid the foundation for the partition of Africa. Of course, we will agree that this led to the nationhood creation in Africa. This has not been the traditional state creation, but the Europeans will divide African among themselves, and Gold Coast, for that matter, Ghana, is of no exception. So eventually these four spaces were put together by 1957 and Ghana is created. We must bear in mind that in the creation of these states, there were no considerations for ethnic dimension or diversification of Ghana as we have it today.
Okay.
And therefore, Ghana could be referred to as a heterogeneous society, a country made up of a lot of ethnic groups or different ethnic groups. And when we want to look at linguistics creation or mutual intelligibility, then of course we can say that we have five major ethnic groups that will be the main ground or the main groups that will constitute what Ghana is today.
Okay.
But I said based on linguistic mutual intelligibility, because within the various major groups that I will mention, we also have subgroups and dialectical groups that will constitute them. For instance, you have the Epe, when you have the Adangbe, you have the Akans, you have the Guanche, and you have the Mole Dagwani group of the Northern Extract. All of these are the five major ethnic groups that will constitute what Ghana is today. But even within them, you have minute dialectical groups that will constitute Ghana. And so some people will even put it to 76, some are even thinking of 100.
Wow.
And so this is what Ghana is. However, we must understand that after independence, we have all agreed to see ourselves nationally as Ghanaians and not to club ourselves with our ethnic divisions or ethnic grouping.
Okay.
That's what Ghana is.
I will advise that you pick a pen and a notebook and write all these things down, because this is a pure African studies class that we are having today here. Now, I want to know whether before the name Gold Coast or that we even became Ghana, was there any other name that we had as a group of people before the name Gold Coast was given to us? Was it given to us or it was our real name before we transitioned into Ghana?
So when you look at the situation prior to, as I said, the advent of the Europeans, we never had a complete space created that probably will say that we metamorphosed from Gold Coast to Ghana.
Okay.
And so there were several groups of people within the land that we could say the Efes were here, the Dagombes, the Gonjes, the Akans. Within the Akans, you have various groups before the coming of the Europeans. Even the presence of the Europeans saw the emergence of other groups like the Asante, for instance, emerge in the mid 17th century, when already the Europeans were here in the late 15th century. And so we have various groups that we identify by our indigenous identity or indigenous grouping. You understand? For instance, so they say these are the people, and they are identified so based on language as the main conduit and all other factors. And so there is no specific to the extent that the kingdoms and states that emerged before the coming of the Europeans within the space of the land, and even during the presence of the Europeans, these kingdoms do not have exact a name for the identity of the people. They have to look at the various group of people that they pull together to create the states. So you have the nucleus of the state, you have the vassal states within the kingdoms and the state. And so there is no specific name you assign to this very area or jurisprudence to say that this is Gold Coast and automatically we change it to Ghana. And the Gold Coast was not also the name of the people. It was a description of the area by the Europeans. So yes, this is it. We came to this place. This is the commodity in abundance we found within this space. And so we give the place Gold Coast. For example, so when the Portuguese and later on the British and the Dutch, they found gold in abundance within the coast of of Ghana,
Mhm.
and from interior to the coast, they say no, this place is the Gold Coast, the coast of the gold, that we could find the gold directly. When we were fighting ourselves in Europe over gold that we have to kill, destroy nations to access, we come to this place and it is on the shore. The people are just playing with it, and so this should be a Gold Coast. When you go to Ivory Coast, it is because they had ivory in abundance. The space for elephants, where they actually hunt for a lot of tax of elephants, and that's the ivory. And then so they say yes. You go to Nigeria area where they had a lot of pepper, and then they go to Senegambia area, they call that, so they call it the pepper coast. And at a point in time, even where we are, the Transvolta area, all the way to Dahomey, during the transatlantic slave trade, a lot of slaves were captured or brought through this space to other parts of the world, especially into the New World or the Atlantis. And therefore, they would describe the area as Slave Coast. And so there was no specific name assigned to Gold Coast until the Europeans. So it is more or less a descriptive name rather than the natural name by the people.
Okay.
Yes.
That's I don't know whether I should call it a history telling or storytelling, because these are beautiful insights. Myself, I've never heard a lot of the things that you are saying here today, so I'm also learning. Now, are we telling our own stories or repeating narratives that shapes us by outsiders? Are we telling our own stories, or we are repeating narratives that were told by us, or that we came to meet as people?
So this is the situation. We must admit that for well over 400 plus years, our lives, and for that matter, the totality of our culture has been impacted by the presence of the Europeans.
Okay.
And they shaped and create the structure of frame that will constitute what we see ourselves to be until the dawn of independence. And post independence, we continue to rediscover ourselves, recreate ourselves, reenact ourselves, and retell ourselves in our own lenses, in our own words, in our own philosophies, and all of that. However, it is too early for anybody to feel that a society that is psychologically impacted for well over 500 years will just use less than 100 years to change the order.
Okay.
It is a situation we should accept that as it stands today, we are not telling ourselves, we are not enacting ourselves, we are not speaking ourselves in the true sense of the word.
Okay.
Or if you like, to the level that is appreciable enough for people to see the uniqueness of who we are. But fact also remains that we have not thrown our hands in despair to say that we cannot recreate and rediscover ourselves. So we are on it. Of course, most of our stories that we tell are told through the Eurocentric paradigms or Eurocentric lenses. If you like, our stories were written by the Europeans, and so they will tell our stories in their lenses, the way they look at it. And therefore, most of the things said about us are not naturally what they are supposed to be, because the tellers, for that matter, the Europeans, in our case, the British, we want the world to understand the justification for what they've done to us through the slave trade and then the colonialization. And so these things are said in many ways that are to a large extent implanted in us, and we are gradually moving away from that. That's why there is that need for us to preach and promote the Afrocentric approach to who we are. Very important. And so your story can best be told by you than people who see you from a distance, and we inform the world about you. And so they create stories that will suit or fit the intention for telling the story about you. A typical example I would say is that in the 19th century, a British correspondent was sent from Cape Coast to Kumasi to understudy them and report on Kumasi. Now, he came back and reported, and that was published in the UK and was almost accepted by Europe for a very long time.
Okay.
That he got to Kumasi and that the people were eating pounded yam and pounded cassava with blood. You could understand what he's describing. But of course, palm soup, of course, you see. But he was telling the story from his perspective and his observation. And also, the intention of undermining the people of Kumasi, not only Kumasi, but the people of Africa, that they continue to be savages, primitives, and cannibals, and all of that. And so, that is to preach the inferior state of the African, who is now growing to become a near human and not at the level of a Homo sapien yet. And so, in the words of Cliplin Huria, the African is just the burden of the Europeans. No wonder in the policy application during the colonial era, France, for instance, we introduced the policy of assimilation, that is to deculture the African and recreate them, giving them European identity to be human enough.
Really?
Same was done by the Portuguese. Of course, the British have done their way, but in a more humane manner, based on the policy they introduced. That's indirect rule, and so I think strongly that we are not there yet.
Okay.
We are not telling our story from the Ghanaian perspective naturally or completely. We continue to accept some of the narratives as told by the Europeans about us, and that, of course, the main source of literature to us. But I think we should thank God that we've got men of the Afrocentric nature who actually changed the order in their writings about Africa. So you are talking about Sheikh Anta Diop of Senegal, you are talking about Edu Boahen, you are talking about Amenume, you are talking about Adofenyi, you are talking about Irina Odote, you are talking about Nukunya, you are talking, a lot of them have gone on the line, and we are talking about the contemporary ones. Yayo is there. And so, look, we are doing our best. Gavois, Apowazi, a lot of historians are coming out. The Baku, you see, thousand. I cannot finish with them. And so, we are recreating ourselves in the natural space.
Okay.
Telling the story from the perspective of the African. We always say that until the lions comes to the village to tell the story of the hunt, it is only the hunter that will always have the side of the day. And so I think, yes, we are doing well, but not there yet. So our story is a mixed story, both of the European source and then the African source. But I must say that the European source has a lot of influence over us, mostly written by people who are not anthropologists, people who are not historians, people who are not sociologists and archaeologists, but they were here to just report, missionaries reporting on the activities, and these things were taken hook and sink as the truth of the Africans. And I think that's what we are left to do, and we will continue to create the awareness of the African, understanding himself from the African perspective.
Wow. Thank you so much for this insightful lecture. Let me call it a lecture because I've decided not to interrupt the flow so that myself and our viewers and listeners will get to understand these things very, very well. Because just as you said, the hunter has always been the one telling the story. And then just as you mentioned, a list of lions who are now coming out of the forest to the communities to tell the stories of their own. I think with time, we will also begin to have a real feel of who we are. I just got a bit, how will I say, I don't know, emotional when you made mention that the man saw people enjoying good African meal. And I'm very sure that at that time there were a lot of snails. So
not only snails, mushroom will be there.
Mushrooms will be there.
Pepper
And all other things, and all those things, shouting in the soup, a good palm nut soup.
Yes.
And he only saw, because of the oil on the soup, he saw it as a
Yes.
blood.
And he could have, of course, from the perspective of a historian, a researcher, an anthropologist, he could have got into it participative, the need be
Okay.
to understand what the
Exactly
meal
what
of the
they are
people
eating.
were. But of course, there was a preconceived mind about the Africans. That they were still in the process of becoming human, as I said, and so they were not near even Homo sapiens, and that they were primitive, and that they could not even qualify to eat anything except their own blood. And then so, after all, they were engaged in slave trade, killing themselves to sell prisoners of war and all of that. And so it has to do with the preconceived mind and how they saw the African to be.
Mm.
Yes.
So now, so most of our stories are being written based on the colonial era about us. When you read books, it's more or less like the things that the whites came to do with us, and then all that. We don't really have stories or history that speaks about the days before the colonial masters arrived. Are there materials there that we can chance on so that we could read things that came before the colonial masters arrived on our coast? Are there materials that we can
Yeah, so
access?
I must admit that the reason why Hegel would say that the African has no history and has not contributed to the civilization of the world or the development of the world has to do with a basic error, or if you like, a, a false assumption that we have not written our past, we've not written our story in a form that is well coded and documented.
Okay.
And as a result of
Like the
that,
Greeks did.
yeah, but we will come there. We will come there. In fact, so the basic argument or the centrality of Hegel's argument is that because the African has not written enough about himself in the past, everything of African is as a making of the Europeans. And so the history of the African is a history of the European of African.
Okay.
That's what he's saying. But that is a falsified assumption, or if you like, a false assumption. And good news is that this very theory or concept was not dismantled by African writers. It was done by Van Sina,
Okay.
a Belgian historian who mastered the history of oral tradition. And as a result of his own uh, writings, Hegel became a useless propounder, so to speak. So Van Sina will tell you that the very history of Europe, right? The very history of Europe will start from the pre-colonial era, a prehistoric era.
Okay.
Because during the prehistoric era, we never had a written form of anything.
Yeah.
And so there are many other forms by which history can be told beyond just a written form.
Okay.
And when you study the Africans, it is very important for us to appreciate that Africans depends largely on the non-documented or non-written form of history or of culture of their life than that of the written one. But that is not to say that Africans have not written about themselves in the past. You know, the first form of human writing started with the Kemet civilization, that's the pharaonic Egypt, and that is hieroglyphics. And so that cannot be the case. And we had various forms of how we write things. And so that understanding must be established. In actual fact, the first form of human writing in the world will start with Egypt, Kemet. And so that argument is settled. But I must say that at a point in time, the writings of the Africans will not be that much compared to where Europeans move away from the prehistoric period and they started documentation of their lives and their story. Okay. But as I said, that is not the only way out. There are alternatives, and that is also accepted by the world, the world of history, and so that's very important. For instance, we look at archaeology. So if it is not written by the excavation and the trace of the artifacts of the past of the human activities of the people, it speaks a lot about them. Okay. We have a form of how to, or a method of how to get history out of archaeological materials of the past remains of people that were excavated or that are excavated. Now, again, we have what we call linguistics, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Linguistics has to do with the scientific study of the origin and the changes that occur in interrelated languages. And so, if I'm here and then I speak Epe, I go to Togo, somebody is speaking Epe. I go to Benin, somebody is speaking Fon. You go to Tokome in Ile-Ife and somebody is speaking Epe. Linguistics will explain whether these people belong to one ancestral tree,
Okay.
or they have one progenitor, or they live in one space and there was imposition of, if you like, internal colonization and all of that. So linguistics is very important. But above all, me, I strongly believe in ethnomusicology, right?
Okay.
So Escovitch, who stayed in eastern part of Africa for well over 26 years, and that study the nature and the history of the Africans, he concluded that the African is born to music, named to music,
Okay.
married to music,
Hmm.
who died to music and buried to music. And so he strongly believes that the people cannot be separated from their music. And when you pick their music, you are getting the people. And getting the people also means that you are getting their stories of the past.
Sure.
So for instance, when I sit in this studio now and I begin to sing Fiago Koli Peunta Sesenta Live ya ukata ojole ebo esi me ojemo ozo maybe. So at the end of the day, by the time I'm done with this, I am telling the great story of how the people migrated from Ngochie, the circumstances under which they migrated, and the method, the means by which they moved out of the great wars of Ngochie and settled in their final home. And so ethnomusicology speaks a lot, and ethnography is there. You are looking at serology, you are looking at ethnobotany, you are looking at ethnozoology. So ethnobotany, for instance, there are some trees that we identify in history. When you find them within a specific space, it's telling you that once upon a time somebody settled in this place before.
Okay.
Excavation can be done. So the approach to understanding the African past is multidisciplinary.
Okay.
It is
not straight.
multifaceted in nature. If it's a kind of a combination of factors, areas of studies that will tell you and authenticate the African person. So it doesn't have to do with all the time the written form of the people. And oral tradition, very important.
Okay.
The transfer of a history of the people from the past to the new generation, and over and over. Of course, all of them have their own weaknesses and strengths, so to speak. They have their weaknesses and strengths. Even the written ones that we are reading, they have their weaknesses and strengths, because it depends on the spectacle you use in writing and looking at history. You know, history of people is not, in a true sense of objectivity in science research, is not about 1+1, anywhere you find yourself is 2. No, history is about the study of the traces of the events of the past of a people. And so the traces available to you speaks to the event and also enables you to do the analysis of that. And so I think we cannot say that we don't have our history. We have our history. There are many forms by which we can get our history that Europeans cannot. What I have just sung, how many Europeans will be able to sing this? And how will they get it when they cannot sing it? And so this is it. Let us tell it our own way. That's what I'm saying. That should be our standard.
Thank you so much. I think we are going to have the part 2 of this particular conversation, because I don't want to rush the conversation. I really want us to understand it well. And we are still in the Ghana month. So next week, next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks, we can still continue this conversation. Now, if we want to take politics and the struggles that we had in the past, how can someone describe Ghana without the politics and the struggles that we've had in the past? Is there any way that we can describe Ghana outside the politics of it from the very beginning, maybe even pre-colonial time? Because I'm very sure that before the colonial masters arrived, there could be a little bit of politics. Wherever 2 or more people are gathered, there will surely be a small politics.
Sure.
So can we say that we can tell our story without the politics of it?
So as a student of history and teacher of same, I must always remind ourselves with the statement that a society or individual or group of individuals who are not able to understand where they come from, which is their history,
Yeah.
they will not be able to understand where they are standing at the moment or where they are standing. And that will also dislocate them from shaping their future. So it's very important. We cannot just jump and say, this is Ghana.
Okay.
Where from it? From the heavens? No, there was yesterday of this very space.
Sure.
Even prior to the coming of the Europeans, I said we had our own forms of social organization.
Yes.
And society cannot be organized without politics. In actual fact, politics becomes the primus inter pares in all facets of societal organization.
Okay.
To the extent that where we have acephalous societies, of course, acephalous society we would describe as stateless society or societies where central power is not vested in an individual, for instance, like a chief or a queen and all of that.
Mhm.
Even within these acephalous societies, the leadership, which in most cases will exercise religious powers
Okay.
and control, will in disguise exercise political power, especially when the need arises and for exigency of time, the society by leadership through clan heads and all of that will come together and exercise political authority and dispense him at the same time. So the fact is that whether you are looking at the social, economic, religious, or any other facets of societal organization, it is important for us to understand that it is politics that organizes the society for all others to thrive. So I must say that there was always a political space for the organization of Ghana and, for that matter, Africa. And therefore, we cannot say that we will take politics out of our life. It is the politics that even led to the colonial struggle. It is the politics that will speak to the sovereignty of the people,
Okay.
and that which was taken by the Europeans, and they will struggle and resist that, and eventually will lead to independence. And of course, it is a political dispensation which is still keeping all of us here today. And so politics is a centrality to any societal existence.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So what it means is that politics has always been with us, even
Sure.
from our various homes.
Sure.
So it is not politics that is actually distorting whatever that we are.
No.
Maybe it is the type of politics
That we are
actually-
playing that definitely.
Okay.
Whatever way you want to look at it, it remains politics.
Politics.
But you want to look at which of them you want to adopt and to suit your environment, because politics is also eco-heritage tonal. I think so. So it's within the ecosystem that you find yourself. That's it.
Now, Ghana was the first sub-Saharan African country to obtain independence by the works of our forefathers, Dr. Nkrumah being the foreleader of that time. But when you check from our lives today as Ghanaians, you realize that we still suffer from the colonial mentality
Dementia.
and all that.
Let's be frank with the words.
Yes. Okay, you call it dementia. I'm trying to be a little bit.
Disease. It's a colonial disease.
So do the remnants of colonial mentality still affect how we see ourselves?
Surely. Very important, we must understand.
Okay.
From the outset, I laid a foundation that the Europeans were here for well over 500 years. And so, and from the very beginning, they plan to impose themselves on us, making us look like second-class human beings
Okay.
and never qualify to be like them. And so psychologically, they tune and orient us towards understanding that we are not human enough, we are not capable enough, and our capabilities should be conducive to the European teachings, European lives, and all of that. And so, yes, we cannot run away from it. As I said, we are in this studio speaking English when we have to be speaking Ewe, when we have to be speaking Chi, We should be speaking Ga, but here we are. There is no national lingua franca, so we are using English as the base for our conversation, for our communication as people. So we cannot say that our lives are not shaped by colonial presence. Of course, our names. And my father gave me divine. I always say that to my student that my father wasn't elected, but he gave me divine.
Yeah.
And when they ask you what is divine, by meaning divine means the holy one.
Yeah.
Look at the size of my nose. Shall I be holy? Will I be holy? That's the question you want to ask yourself. So I preserve to be
That's
to
body features put someone in a position being holy or not.
very important. Very, very important. They look at you and look at they look at the African and say, this look like a monkey. Can he be holy? In actual fact, in some of their theories, we are not even candidates for heaven.
Sure.
The reason we were looked at as thou beast of burden and should be taken to the fields to work for the economic survival of the other world.
Okay.
And so, of course, the size of my nose should tell me that I'm not holy. But what I'm saying is that my father gave me divine. Probably, if he's alive today, he would have regretted because the son has grown to be the traditional boy that he wanted him to be.
Okay.
And the other name should not affect his life. And so I would prefer to be called Sedu Afia Takuma Yao and any other thing. And God be so good. I have two boys. One is called Selassie Akhenaten. And Akhenaten is the original Kushite Meroe African name, original name. And of course, when you listen to the meaning of that, the most efficient ruler of the ancient order. That's very important for us.
All right.
I don't want to give my son Joseph. He wasn't. He's not. He's not a Palestine. He's not a Hebrew, and that he could not be the one that would be sacrificed. Yes, he should be given a Ghanaian name. And he should be given an African name, and that is what it means. And so my father definitely, of course, he's a senior man out there in the second world. I believe strongly that when I meet him again, I will ask him why he gave me that name.
Divine.
So yes, I'm saying that our dressing, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's not to say that Ghana, we should remain to be, no, culture is very dynamic.
Yeah.
The development of society is based on enculturation and acculturation.
Okay.
Enculturation comes from within the culture itself. The dynamism, developments that will occur within the culture itself. And then the same that will come from outside the culture based on association with other societies. So I can't pretend to say that we need to be naked by this time, continue to put on the skins of animal and say these are Africans. That's not to say that. But our dressing should also correspond with the ecosystem that we have. That's what I'm preaching. And I'm saying that the food we eat, we destroy our food.
Yeah.
Look, ask your student today and I say, what is your best food? And they will tell you shawarma, rice, pizza. And when you say, can you prepare kukunte, apiwa, then all of them want to run away from the class.
Yeah.
And so you say your best food is banku and fetridate your okra soup, and somebody wants to vomit at the same time. This is it. Somebody say TZ and I said Fanti Kenke, and one student jumped up. And see, if it is not Indomine, there is nothing that we call food. And so, yes, we cannot say that we are completely out of the wood. We cannot say that. The legacy of the colonial life is still with us. Our religion, see, so I am somebody strongly, we believe in our African traditionalism. I am not saying we should go killing ourselves, but our religion and spirituality is very important. Today, when the African spirituality is expressed, somebody wants to say that you are not going to heaven. I say, when I have the opportunity to go to heaven, I will say I will go the second batch because I want to see the number of people who will go before me. And so the fact remains that
Second batch.
I tell you, I will go second batch. So I always say that, see, so the African spirituality is different from religion because religion is a creation of humanity, but spirituality and the relations with the creator is another level. And so just that religion is used as a conduit to express that, and that the intention of religion comes in many forms. And somebody wants to read why Theodosius and Constantine will use Catholicism as a or Christianity as the state religion for the Roman Empire. For what purpose? For political purpose. That will be another conversation we have another time.
Sure.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for those insightful revelations. Let me call it revelations because most of them we are not aware of most of them. So we struggle to even define who we are as Ghanaians. If you are not a historian and all that, we don't get the chance to feed on some of these things that gives us that subconsciousness of who we are. Now, moving on to that, do we subconsciously believe that foreign is better?
Not subconsciously. When you say subconsciously, to some extent, we are not that aware of what we are doing.
Okay.
Subconscious. So you act. You act without necessarily knowing that you are acting.
Okay.
Involuntarily, something like that. You're not
Okay.
conscious about it. You are not deliberate about it. It cannot be the case. We are deliberate about our actions and our thoughts and our philosophy that the white is better. Because then you cannot blame the people. I said for well over 400, 500 years, we have been redirected, recreated. We've been decultured and now recultured
Okay.
by the Europeans. And we are made to believe that we cannot be without them. And so food from them is the best. Music from them is the best. Language from them is the best. The dress from them is the best. Traveling to them is the best. It's even the best thing that can happen to you, that you leave the jungles of Africa to come to Europe. You understand?
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of subconsciousness. We are deliberate about it. But the fact is, how do you dismantle this?
Exactly.
It is psychological. If it is not psychological, it's something tangible. We will destroy it. We will hold it and then destroy it. But it is psychological, so intangible, and it's been planted. And I say, when it comes to cultural understanding of a society, it takes over 100 plus years to redirect a tradition or to change a status quo. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And so we must agree that we are not out of the wood. The political independence of Africa, of course, we claim 1960 to be the year of Africa because many Africans had their independence in that year. We also say, of course, Ghana being the first, I heard you say that we were the first to have had independence from the Europeans as sub-Saharan African country. Yes, that's the truth. But that was in 1957. And so we between 57, 60, 65, majority of us had our independence. But question is, what independence? I think that should be the conversation.
Okay.
What independence? It has to do with ceremonial independence. Just because right after independence, we began another form of coloniality that Kwame Nkrumah will put in his own philosophy as neo-coloniality, new form of colonialism. In this case, the imperialist has remarked himself in a way that you are not seeing his political presence, but his economic presence is even more than the political presence. That's the case. And so, yes, we had our independence, but then because our survival, our economic life, and almost virtually everything except the ceremonic removal of coloniality, we are still attached to the apron strings of the Europeans. And for Ghana, to the British. Look, the Gold Pack or the colonial pack of the French West Africans. It's another example you want to. So they are still in the hands of the Europeans, especially the French. And so the movement from the assimilation to association is just a semantics. It's just a change of words. And so they are not truly independent. We are not truly independent, other than that our development should be of a different level. But of course, they came with mercantilist theory. That's to make us underdeveloped. So I wish our listeners will have the opportunity and develop the time of reading this work of Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. It's a must read for every African, and you will understand whether we are out of the wood or not. It's just a ceremonial name. And so, yes, we are still there. We are still with them. and it is our responsibility. Of course, we have failed ourselves. Our next generation cannot be failed by us.
Okay.
And so it is our responsibility to do what we are doing now. It is our responsibility to celebrate Ghana month, not Ghana year, not Ghana month. So it should be every day thing across the various number of hours, minutes, days, weeks of the year. We should be every moment thing we should be doing. It should be every moment thing we should be doing. So I think that is it. We are still there. We have not moved away. It's not subconscious. We believe strongly that everything white is supreme, and that I'm telling you, go to Kantamanto today, the coat you want to wear here, if it is produced in Ho, Kumasi, you will not. You prefer the used one in Kantamanto. So everybody has the best piece in Kantamanto, including myself here. Is that the case? No. Why? Because we underdevelop our industry, and so we cannot get them properly on our shelves and buy. So everybody, and that is a deliberate attempt, action by the Europeans. That's it. Yes.
This is so breathtaking. I'm blessed to have listened to these things today. And also when I heard the president declaring Wednesday as a national Fugu Day, I was of the view that it should become a national Fugu Day as an everyday thing. So when we are going to our places of work, we are beautifully dressed in our colors because we are people of color. Um, Assuming you walk into an office and you see the ladies dressed beautifully in the fugu colors, and even when you look at the fugu, some they have just one color, but most of them have
Multicolored.
combinations that are so beautiful. So if we can have it even from Wednesday to Friday, I think it will be better. Because as you said, I when I go and buy a suit now, Africa is hot. Africa is very hot.
We must understand. I always have these funny things about, of course, my learned colleagues. I am not their colleague anyway. I always will question them why they continue to wear the wig. I in this hot sun tropical space of Africa, why do we our policemen will always wear the black and continue to absorb heat even in the hot sun? I wonder why our officers will be in suits and will be sweating all over while they still need to, where they don't even have fan and air conditions in their offices. They are in suit. And so it's a problem. It's a colonial problem that we have to reculture ourselves. We have to reculture ourselves. We have to reorient ourselves. We have to reenact ourselves. We need to rediscover ourselves. In Kwame Nkrumah's old words, we must re-understand and recreate the African personality. We need to rediscover the African personality. The recovery process is very important. See, so the declaration of just one day is not enough. In fact, President Kufuor started with the case of Friday wear, very important. That took me to an interview in one of the institutions in Kumasi where I had a problem with one of the panelists and over why I as an African studies person coming for an interview to be appointed as an African studies lecturer, I should be in an African wear on Friday. My friend, I did not get a job.
The interview was on Friday.
Yes, I did not get a job, but I believe strongly that I sent a very strong message that very well will impact that very panel and probably send some things home in a case of education. So yes, President Mahama has added the Fugu Day to it. I strongly believe that a day will come. A day will come. Not in my life. I don't care. But we must lay the foundation. Not in the life of my son. I don't care. It can be in my life. It can be in the life of my son. I do not care. The most important thing is that it must start from somewhere. And today should be the beginning. That a day will come. It will be 7 days African wear, not just 2 days in the week.
In our food.
Yes.
And our tie and dyes and all that. Thank you so much for those beautiful words. Let me put it that way. And I have learned. I will have to go back again and rewatch this particular episode. And we want to bring you back next week as well.
We
So
pray,
try and make time
we
for
pray
us
for time.
next week
We pray
so
for
that we
time.
can continue. I have a lot of questions and follow-up questions, but I don't want to dilute the conversation.
Sure.
So I've pinned them down.
Yes.
When we come next week, we'll look at some of them.
We pray for time.
And sure, I pray that God will make that time available.
Yes.
Because what we are doing here is opening new chapters. Now, when you don't understand what is in the previous one and you open a new one, you just be reading in a dilemma. You will not be able to connect the dots. So we are taking our time on this platform to open the chapters one after the other. And I hope a chapter on who we are as Africans and for that matter, Ghanaians has been opened. Now, this is just the first two paragraphs. The rest of the paragraphs, we'll bring them to you next week. Same time, same place from Christoph Media or Christoph Online TV. Now, if you've been part of this conversation and you have a question to ask, don't forget to put it in the comment section. Subscribe also to the channel and then put us on post notification that anytime we come live, you will get a notification and follow the conversation. Mr. Amu, thank you so much for coming to bless us today, for bringing us out of some of the disbeliefs and the distortions that we have in our minds as Black people or as Africans, and for that matter, as Ghanaians. We are original. We have not been made by any other person, but we have been made by the creator of the world, and we are also not inferior to any other race.
Sure.
Let's get to understand that very well. In as much as we buy into the new developments, which has made it possible for us to even sit here and have this conversation so that you can watch us from wherever that you are, does not mean that what we are and what we have is inferior. We just have to use that to balance what we have so that we can get our images up and up every day. So stick and stay with us. Same time Wednesday, we'll be back with Mr. Amu. Yes, you will surely see him. I pray that God will make it that possible. So thank you. This has been the new chapter and brought to you by the Prince Capital Foundation. And we have been powered by Christoph Online TV. See you on Wednesday. Bye bye.